My parents tried to corner me into being my sister's unpaid live-in caregiver, so I disappeared. What happened next shattered their illusion of control. I'm a 25-year-old who worked hard to graduate college and land my first job as a kindergarten teacher. It's not a lucrative gig, but I love working with kids, so it's worth it. Money's tight, though, especially starting out. That's why I've been living with my parents in the same suburban house I grew up in. It's not thrilling, but it's practical. They charge me rent, fare, as my dad calls it. I buy my own groceries and help with chores like mowing the lawn, fixing things, and cleaning the garage last summer when Dad sprained his ankle. It's not glamorous, but it's temporary. My plan was to stay a couple of years, save up, and get my own place. Straightforward, right? Not when my older sister Jessica re-entered the picture. Jessica, 32, has never been the responsible type. Growing up, she was the golden child. Maybe because she was the firstborn, or because our parents have a blind spot for her, she could do no wrong. She dropped out of college twice. First, it wasn't her vibe. Then, the professors were too strict. She's never held a job longer than a few months. Whenever life didn't go her way, she'd quit, blame someone else, and our parents would swoop in. Behind on rent, they'd pay it. Car trouble, they'd cover repairs. Speeding ticket, Mom would pay while grumbling about cops targeting young women. Meanwhile, I was cleaning tables at a cafe to save for college and taking loans for tuition. Jessica had been living on her own, or so I thought, bouncing between apartments, always late on rent, propped up by our parents. I didn't know until she showed up, casually announcing she was pregnant. I'm not judging her choices, but Jessica was far from stable. The baby's father, a guy she dated briefly, bailed when she told him. You'd think this would jolt her into responsibility. Nope. She ran to Mom and Dad, who went into rescue mode. Within a week, they were remodeling the basement into a small apartment for her, complete with a kitchenette. I overheard Mom say they were tapping their retirement savings. I stayed out of it. It was their money, their choice. But I knew their pattern. Jessica's problems always become everyone's problems. They expect the whole family to rally around her messes. At first, I thought it wouldn't involve me. She'd have her own space in the basement, and I'd keep living my life. It was annoying to see them cater to her again, but I let it go. That lasted 2 months. Then, small things piled up. Mom started hinting I should spend more time with Jessica because she's struggling. I was working full-time, coming home drained, but she'd say, Jessica's all alone, pregnant and single. Dad was worse, weaving Jessica into every conversation. You're lucky, Sarah, he'd say over dinner, passing the butter. Not everyone has your stability. Lucky. I was barely getting by, building a career, saving pennies. Jessica was getting a renovated apartment and endless support. Things escalated when I overheard Mom and Dad one night while I was making tea in the kitchen. She'll need a lot of help when the baby arrives, Mom said. Of course, Dad replied. We'll all chip in. All? Mom asked. You, me, and Sarah, Dad said, like it was obvious. I nearly dropped my cup. They hadn't mentioned this to me, but they'd already decided I was part of their plan. That's when the unease set in. The feeling grew as Jessica started hanging around more, sprawling on the couch, whining about pregnancy and her ex's betrayal. She'd comment on how fortunate I was to have a job and no kids. I held my tongue to avoid fights, but I kept thinking, why is this always on me? By the time we sat for dinner that night, I sensed trouble. Everyone was too casual, like they were hiding something. Dinner was lasagna, Dad's go-to for serious family talks. I don't know why. Lasagna doesn't soften bad news. I focused on my plate, trying not to overthink. Halfway through, Mom cleared her throat. We've been thinking, she began, glancing at Dad. I froze. Nothing good followed that phrase. With Jessica moving in, she'll need support, Mom said, voice syrupy. Support with what? I asked, keeping my tone even. Dad jumped in. The baby, obviously. Jessica's got a lot to handle, and it'll be tough alone. I looked at Jessica, scrolling her phone, unbothered. Okay, but what's that got to do with me? I asked, setting my fork down. They exchanged a glance, like they were scripting their next words. You're here, and you're great with kids, being a teacher, Mom said. We thought you could help with babysitting. Help? I echoed, skeptical. Dad nodded eagerly. Just watch the baby while Jessica gets settled. Not full-time, just when you're home. I stared, incredulous. You want me to babysit a newborn after teaching all day? You're done by 3 p.m., Mom said, as if that settled it. And you're not paying full rent, Dad added, like it was a bargaining chip. I gaped. They weren't asking for occasional help. They wanted me to take on a second job for free. Let me get this straight, I said, leaning back. You expect me to work all day, then come home and care for Jessica's baby? Mom sighed, like I was being difficult. It's not like that, Sarah. We'll all pitch in. All? I repeated. Yes, Dad said. Family helps family. Jessica finally looked up, smirking. Wow, Sarah, I didn't know helping your sister was such a big deal. My hands clenched under the table. Her entitlement was infuriating. It's not about that, I said. I have my own life, my own job. I can't drop everything to babysit. You're being selfish, Mom snapped. Jessica's struggling. The least you can do is help. Why is it my job to fix her choices? I shot back, voice rising. She's 32, not a child. Jessica gave me a mock-shocked look. Enough, Dad said sternly. We're in this together, like it or not. You live here, and we expect you to contribute. Contribute? I said. I pay rent, buy my food, do chores. How's that not enough? Silence. Jessica's smirk grew. If you won't help, Mom said, we might need to rethink your living situation. My stomach sank. Are you threatening to kick me out? Not at all, Mom said quickly. But if you won't do more, we may need to raise your rent. I couldn't believe it. I'd done everything to be a responsible tenant, and now they were leveraging rent to force me into childcare. You're really doing this? I asked, voice trembling. Punishing me for not being Jessica's nanny? It's not punishment, Dad said. It's about family. I stood. It's about you enabling Jessica, like always, and dragging me into it. Don't talk about your sister like that, Mom hissed. I'm done, I said, heading upstairs. Help Jessica if you want, but leave me out. I slammed my door, heart pounding. They'd crossed a line. It wasn't just favoritism, it was control. They wanted me stuck under their roof, bending to their demands. Jessica's smugness during that talk stuck with me. She barely spoke, just scrolled her phone like it wasn't her mess. To her, it wasn't. Mom and Dad were handling everything, and now they wanted me to join in. I barely slept, replaying the conversation, wishing I'd said more. By morning, I was still angry, but felt trapped. Leaving wasn't easy. I was new to my job with little savings. Rent around here was steep, and I couldn't afford a solo place. For days, the house was tense. Mom and Dad were cold, tossing passive-aggressive jabs. Must be nice to have so much free time, Mom said as I got home. Some people don't, Dad added, nose in his paper. I ignored them, retreating to my room. I wasn't up for fighting. It would only escalate. Jessica, meanwhile, acted like royalty. She wasn't fully moved in, but was over constantly, leaving her shoes by the couch, bags on the table, taking over the living room. One night, I found her sprawled on the sofa, eating ice cream, watching a dating show. She gave a half-hearted hey and ignored me. I waited for an apology or acknowledgement. Nothing. Then I checked the fridge. My bread, yogurt, and leftovers were gone. Did you take my food? I asked, walking back in. Jessica didn't look up. Mom said it was fine. She didn't buy it, I snapped. Jessica rolled her eyes. Relax, Sarah. It's just food. It's my food, I said, voice rising. Buy your own. God, you're so dramatic, she said, setting her bowl down. It's not like I took your phone. I was livid, but knew arguing was pointless. She'd always gotten away with this, enabled by our parents, who now wanted me to enable her too. The next morning, Mom cornered me while I made coffee. You need to apologize to your sister, she said sternly. For what? I asked, baffled. For making her feel unwelcome. She's struggling and you're being difficult. Seriously? I said. She ate my food and acted like it was nothing. How's that my fault? Mom sighed, like I was unreasonable. It's just food, Sarah. You can buy more. That's not the point, I said, voice steady. She doesn't respect boundaries, and you're letting her. Boundaries? Mom scoffed. This is her home too. Learn to share. I realized then, she didn't care about my side. She just wanted me to comply. Things worsened. Mom and Dad hinted at raising my rent if I didn't step up. Jessica moved more stuff in, filling the basement with furniture and boxes, even using my bathroom because the downstairs one wasn't nice enough. I kept my distance, but they were determined to pull me into her chaos. One night, Dad showed me a budget spreadsheet. We need to talk, he said, gesturing to the couch. I sat, wary. With Jessica moving in, costs are rising, he said, tapping the paper. It's only fair you contribute more. You're already charging me rent, I said. How much more? He shrugged. We're figuring it out, but if you won't help with the baby, this is the solution. I was stunned. They were using rent to force me into childcare. This is insane, I said, standing. I'm paying enough for what I get here. If you want me gone, say it. No one's saying that, Dad said. Just do your part. Jessica's part, you mean? I shot back, leaving the room. I slammed my door, knowing I couldn't stay. They saw me as free labor, not a person with my own life. The thought of leaving grew stronger every time Jessica acted like she owned the house or my parents guilt-tripped me. But deciding to leave and doing it were different. I had little savings, not enough for my own place, and moving felt daunting. Still, staying meant being trapped. If I gave in now, it'd never stop. They'd keep piling responsibilities on me until I was stuck forever. The next morning, I opened my budget spreadsheet. Rent, groceries, gas, loans. I wasn't great at saving, but I had some put aside. I calculated I could move if I found something affordable and cut back on extras. Then I remembered my coworker Mia mentioning she needed a roommate weeks ago. I hadn't thought much of it, but now it was a lifeline. I texted her. Is that roommate spot still open? She replied instantly, Yep, still looking. Interested? Maybe. Can we talk after work? Sure, she said. That afternoon, I met Mia in her classroom after school. What's up? She asked, grading papers. I hesitated, then said, I'm thinking of moving out. My parents are making things tough. She nodded, understanding. The offer's open. It's a small place, clean, $800 a month, utilities included. It was more than I'd hoped, but manageable. When do you need someone? I asked. Yesterday, she laughed, then added, Anytime. The room's yours if you want it. I said I'd decide by week's end, but I'd already made up my mind. I had to move without tipping off my parents. They'd guilt me or raise my rent to sabotage my savings if they knew. So I packed slowly, clothes, essentials, things I couldn't replace, storing them in my car under a blanket. I documented everything, taking photos of my room, furniture, and electronics, knowing Jessica might claim my stuff. I researched and printed a 30-day notice letter, even though I wasn't a legal tenant, to cover my bases. That night, I barely slept, checking the clock, listening for movement. At 6 a.m., I slid the letter under my parents' door. By the time I got home from work, they were waiting in the living room. What's this? Dad asked, holding the letter like it was an insult. My notice, I said calmly. You're really doing this? Mom asked, voice trembling. Yes, I found a place. I'm moving out by month's end. You can't just leave, Mom said. What about Jessica? The baby? I took a deep breath. They're not my responsibility. I've done enough, but I can't live like this. What's wrong with you? Dad snapped. We've given you so much, letting you stay here, and this is how you repay us? I clenched my fists. I pay rent, buy my food, do chores. I'm not your kid to order around. I'm an adult, not Jessica's backup plan. Mom started crying, predictably. How can you do this to us? To your sister? I said nothing. They wouldn't listen, and I wouldn't budge. The next days were awkward. Mom and Dad barely spoke to me, tossing guilt trips when they did. Jessica acted like nothing changed, taking over the house. One night, I found her stuff piled in the basement, boxes on the couch, clothes in the closet, like she was claiming everything. Hope you don't mind, she said. I didn't respond, just went to my room, ignoring my anger. In my final days, I focused on moving, packing the last essentials, checking my budget, getting keys from Mia. The morning I left, I planned to move early with Mia's help, hoping Jessica was asleep and my parents distracted. But as I hauled boxes to my car, Dad's footsteps echoed. What are you doing? He demanded. I told you. I'm leaving, I said, grabbing another box. You can't sneak out like this, he snapped, following me. We're family, Sarah. Are you abandoning us? I set a box in the trunk and faced him. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm living my life. There's a difference. Mom appeared, crying. You're really doing this? What about Jessica, the baby? I sighed. I've said it before. They're not my problem. I can't keep fixing her mistakes. That set Mom off. How dare you talk about your sister like that? She's trying. Is she? I replied. It looks like she's waiting for everyone else to do the work. Jessica emerged from the basement, smirking. Don't worry, Mom, she said sarcastically. If Sarah wants to be selfish, let her. We don't need her. I fought the urge to snap, turning to Mia, who'd just arrived. Let's finish this, I said. Mia helped load my stuff while my parents ranted. Who'll help us now? Dad yelled. How can you be so cruel? Mom sobbed. Jessica watched, leaning against the doorframe like it was a show. When we finished, I looked at the house one last time. It should have been bittersweet, but I felt only relief. I drove off, Mia behind me. At Mia's apartment, the relief was instant. It wasn't fancy, but it was calm, drama-free. We unpacked in an hour and sat on the couch, talking about work. It felt normal, like the life I'd been missing. But 2 hours later, my phone exploded. Calls, texts, voicemails from my parents, aunts, cousins. Mom had told everyone I'd abandoned the family. How could you do this to your sister? Aunt Linda's voicemail said. She's pregnant and vulnerable. Don't you care? A cousin texted, selfish doesn't cover it. Jessica's social media was worse, posting her baby bump with captions like, some people run from family, but my baby will know real love. I blocked her. It stung, but it reminded me why I left, to escape their manipulation. A week later, Mom showed up at my school during lunch, sobbing, saying I'd ruined the family and Jessica was falling apart. My principal had to escort her out, which was humiliating. I avoided everyone's stares, knowing they were curious about my drama. That incident helped, though. I'd left important documents, teaching license, tax forms, in a drawer at home. After telling Mia and another coworker, Lisa, about the situation, they offered to help. Tell us when you're ready to get your stuff, Mia said, handing me her spare keys. We'll make it quick. Days later, we went to the house. My room was unrecognizable. Jessica had moved in her clothes, baby gear on my desk, my nightstand emptied for her things. What's this? I muttered. Jessica appeared, holding a mug, unfazed. Oh, hi, she said. My stuff got mixed in. Hard to tell what's whose now. I stared, floored by her nerve. You mean my room, where I've lived for years? She shrugged, sipping her drink. You left, so what's it matter? She'd done it deliberately to complicate things. But I was prepared. I pulled out my phone, showing photos of my room pre-Jessica. I documented everything, I said, with a list of my stuff, including serial numbers. Jessica's face soured, but before she could speak, Mom and Dad arrived. "What's going on?" Dad demanded. "I'm getting my things, but Jessica's claiming she can't tell what's hers," I said calmly. "I have proof of what's mine." Dad's face darkened. "Take anything that's not yours and I'll call the cops." I laughed coldly. "Go ahead. We can also discuss you entering my room without notice and tampering with my belongings." That silenced him. Mia and Lisa helped sort the mess. Jessica tried claiming my laptop, but I showed the receipt and serial number photo. The more she realized her plan was failing, the angrier she got. "This is unfair," she yelled. "You're stealing from a pregnant woman." I turned to her. "The only one stealing is you, trying to take my time and freedom by expecting me to be your nanny. Not anymore." We loaded Mia's car and left. 6 months later, Jessica had the baby, and as I predicted, things are collapsing. My parents are stuck providing the childcare they tried to push on me, juggling it with their jobs. They're drained, per the few relatives who still talk to me. Jessica hasn't looked for work, claiming she's too overwhelmed, spending her days on her phone, ignoring her duties. She's still in their house, with a crying baby and an unfinished basement renovation draining their savings. They've tried contacting me, first with angry texts about my ingratitude, then guilt trips about the baby needing me, and lately, photos of my nephew with captions like, "Don't you want to meet your nephew? He needs his aunt." I've blocked them on social media and filtered their emails. A few relatives get why I left, but I've said I won't reconnect until my parents and Jessica own their actions and change. Ironically, if they'd respected my boundaries and asked for occasional help like normal people, I'd have likely agreed. I love kids and would have helped sometimes, but their attempt to trap me into full-time childcare while ignoring my autonomy ruined that chance. That's my story. I learned that sometimes the healthiest thing for your family is to stop enabling their toxic patterns, even if it means walking away.